This is Dr. Mark Claus, and I'm just going to run you through really quick how in my office I use Meshmixer to base and label my models in order to get them ready for 3D printing. By no means am I an expert in this. I just happen to dabble in it. I do like Meshmixer. I have tried Blender. I don't like Blender as much. I think it's a little bit more complicated than I need at this point for what I'm doing, and it's much quicker for me to use Meshmixer and Microsoft 3D Builder. So we'll run through that really quickly. So first thing we want to do is obviously download our STL file. Mine comes from the MyAtero site. So here's our STL file. So we'll open Meshmixer. And drag the file in. Let it generate the mesh. So there is our file directly out of Itero. You can see it's been cleaned up a little bit by the AI, but still a little bit too much material there. So first thing we want to do is edit and plane cut. Grab the blue arrow, drag it down to where we want it, and that should be about enough. Click accept, and then we've got a trimmed model that's much better. Now we have to add the base. So to add the base, we want to hit Control A for select all, and then under edit, if we go down, we see there's extrude. You can also just hit the D key, but we'll click extrude. And then we'll see, as long as this little gray hashes show up, and we know everything is going okay, we want to set the offset. I played around with it. I found that in my office, -11 millimeters works the best. Then come down here, change the direction to Y-axis, which means straight down, and then change the end type to flat. And you'll notice we get a much better, nicer base, and it's now solid. So we'll hit accept. Let Meshmixer do the math and fill in the grid. It takes a few seconds to do this, but pretty much now, I'll clear the selection. I've got a based model that's solid, so I will export it, and I'll just save it as something that I know. So I'll say we're just using patient as an example here. So patient upper. So we're exporting the STL. So now it has a base, but it's not labeled yet. Meshmixer is probably an easy way to label it, but I found the easiest way is to close out of Meshmixer and to use a different program called Microsoft 3D Builder, if you're using Microsoft, that is. But you can find it right here. It's actually an app built into Windows 10. I already have my STLs set up to open that app as a default when I open an STL, so I will just double click this patient upper, let it load the model. We'll see it's based. First thing you have to do is click import model, very quick, then select it. You'll see now it has a blue halo. The model is selected. I will then grab it and turn it to the side. I always like to label here in this area. So we're going to edit and emboss. And I always just boss with the patient's last name in capitals, just the way I tend to do it. So last name in capitals, obviously that's too big. So we grab this blue arrow, slide it, click and drag, make it smaller, move it down to whereabouts I want it. Now I'll tip the model a little bit, and right now this name is sticking off, and I don't like that. I want it to be embossed or within the model. So debossed, I should say. So I grab this blue arrow, slide it back. Now that means it's going to be into the model, and click emboss. It takes a few seconds, but it'll do the math again. And then we should have a based model with the patient's name in it once it's done. And there we go. And now you can see we've got it, patient's last name into the model. So the last thing we need to do is save. So we'll go save as, and you need to make sure, this is where I mess up sometimes, you need to change the file type to STL. And I'll just make it patient U, just so we know. Patient U, save. And now I've got an STL that's based and has the patient's name in it. So we'll close this. So here's our patient U. I already did a patient L for the lower, so that's again a based model. I use Chuchubox, so we'll open that. This is what I use for slicing. I have a small printer that only allows for that. That's an old model. Only allows 2 models to be printed at once, horizontal. So I'll drag both those models in, auto layout them into the center, and there we go. And then I can slice and save my sliced model. And I always label my models the same or name my files the same. So this will be 2020 1226 underscore, and then it would be the patient's name, but we'll do last name because we did last name on the model. So I'll let it slice, and that's it. I've got a model that's ready to go to my printer. Again, I did try Blender. I found that it took me longer. It wasn't as easy to place the base on the model. It seems like it's a lot of steps, but it's really not. It's the same steps every single time. And it's literally takes 2 minutes to set up a model and get it ready for printing. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully it will work for you in your office. If it doesn't, there are plenty of other options, but that's the way I do it in my office.